I'm another British moderator, a little less beardy and a little less sweary than Monty, but only just. I'd just like to bring my panel on stage. So we have Peter, Inka, and Juho. It is called the Nordic, building a culture, innovation culture in the Nordics. But we do have 3 Finns with us, so I think we'll have quite a bit of a Finnish angle, but I think that's a good thing, because there's a lot the other Nordic nations can also learn from Finland. So I'll let my panel just briefly introduce themselves, but firstly just 10 seconds about me. So I run something called the Nordic Web. It's an insight and analysis platform focusing on investment in the Nordics, and I also have a small angel fund investing in pre-seed startups.
Hi, I'm Juha, one of the partners at Superhero Capital. I really like the name of the stage to start with. So we're a Helsinki-based VC fund. We invest up to €500,000. We have 17 companies in the portfolio as of today.
Hi everyone, I'm Inka, Chairwoman and founder of Pivot 5, a seed investor and an accelerator company focusing on Nordic startups. We're an investor in 22 companies and co-founder in 7, so focus very much on deep tech. But mainly I'm an angel, so looking forward to the discussion today.
Yeah, and I'm Peter, involved in kind of like a few things. Branded community is what I've done kind of like over the years, so you might have heard about like Slush and Mobile Monday, HP Bazaar back in the day. Then I spent 6 years building this little thing called Angry Birds, which became kind of like a pretty big brand all over the planet. And currently doing many things around education. So the goal is to kind of like transform education globally over the next 10 years. So that's pretty big business opportunity as well. And then another like big project that I'm driving is the tunnel between Helsinki and Tallinn. So in the future, you will be able to get to Helsinki and Tallinn much faster here from Riga as well. So we're also kind of like looking at what we can do about the Rail Baltica thing. But yeah, more about that later.
Excellent. So as Maria touched on in her introduction, the Nordics is home to a lot of billion-dollar companies, only 26 million people, clearly punching above its weight. I think per capita, most billion-dollar companies outside Silicon Valley, of course, Rovio, King, Zendesk, Spotify, Just Eat. There's many, many examples. And if we could get to the answer of why that is, we'd be much richer than we are. But I think what's interesting to actually look at is the culture of the founders themselves, and really whether there are any unique characteristics in Nordic founders compared to, say, other regions. Would you consider there to be unique characteristics to being Nordic?
If I may start, so I think we are very strong in engineering culture. I mean, that's one, but I fully understand that that's roughly the same here, to some extent at least. But I think it's important to understand that in this respect, Nordic is not one area. So, for example, I have to admit, I don't like to admit this, but I have to, that Swedes are much better on marketing and selling stuff than,
I have to disagree totally with that.
You do? Oh, why?
Yeah. I always say that, when I'm asked about, like, okay, how did you make, in Finland, how we made Angry Birds and kind of like Slush and a bunch of other things, and Linux, MySQL also come to mind. And I say that it's like pretty easy for us in Finland because everybody knows that Finnish people are the best marketeers on the planet. And then everybody in Finland laughs, but outside of Finland, people are just like taking notes. Finnish people, best marketeers on the planet. And I think that, again, yes, I mean, of course, traditionally, if you look at some of these like consumer brands like, okay, H&M and IKEA and those come to mind. So, of course, Swedes have a long tradition on building massive consumer brands. But I think that, like in the recent years, we're doing kind of like okay. And especially if you look at the fantastic brands that we built in gaming. And that's one of the most competitive markets out there, direct to consumer. You really, like have to earn your place like every day. And again, best games made in Finland. So I think it's not just technically, but it's the whole experience, the marketing and all that. So again, I don't like the stereotypes of like then Swedes being somehow better. I mean, they're great, but so are we.
Yeah, so if we go back to the unique characters of the Nordic founders, I think it really goes back to the heritage and the culture that we have in the Nordics. Firstly, we're not a class society. It's a very equal society, meaning that the entrepreneurship in a way belongs to everyone. So when it becomes mainstream, it really means that it becomes mainstream. You don't have to go to Harvard or Stanford to become an entrepreneur because the education system is so good. Secondly, I fully agree with Juha that it's actually also very diverse. There are a lot of local cultures, but I think the common denominator is that Scandinavia is a trust society as well. So you can trust that people do what they say. There is a strong trust that the engineers will try their best, and even though you might be good or bad in marketing, you kind of face the facts and know the realities. We also have really small home markets. It really forces the companies to go out by default. We had a huge collapse of the telecom industry, which had global roots but forced people to think differently. We are a bit lazy. Sometimes I think Baltic companies are much more hardworking. Not all, but Scandinavian lifestyle is a very unique character, which I think in a way also speaks to the modern entrepreneurs as well. So there is a possibility to do ambitious things with the balance in life. But I think the biggest impactor on Scandinavian founders has been these first wave of 1 billion unicorns that emerged. Skype, MySQL, Rovio, Supercell, and so forth. So from these roots, I think there has been a next generation of entrepreneurs and companies and investors as well.
But I would also say here that, again, I wouldn't even talk Nordics or Scandinavia or like whatever, because I think that most of the success, if you look at like the big ones, it's Finland and Sweden. And then there's, now it's spreading. So we have, of course, fantastic activity if you look at, Estonia and Tallinn and Tartu and all that. So fantastic startup scene. And I think that we're not seeing so much in Norway, for example. And, they have oil. No need to do kind of like much. You just kind of like lay back and take it easy.
So you think it's like a level of comfort.
Yeah, and I think that it's also that there's maybe not as much tradition. I mean, of course, we have some successful startups in Norway as well, but it's been kind of like different. And then Denmark, I think, also like a bit spotty. Some great ones, but not like maybe consistent kind of like ecosystem performance, if you will. But I think what is happening is that it's clearly spreading and kind of like telling many people here that, I mean, I haven't been to Riga and Latvia for years, and I should be here, of course, much more often, but already yesterday had opportunity to talk to many of the startups here, and I think that, again, as we already touched on, I mean, the same engineering culture and kind of like delivering kind of like fantastic products, but then maybe the maturity of getting kind of like a bit of the marketing and go-to-market, all of that, I think that will come with time, and you just like need the experience. And the nice thing is that if you look at then Nordic and Baltic countries all together, and you look at in global perspective, I mean, we're looking at this from like China or like the US, it's like the same. I mean, there's not like massive difference. There's many similarities in the culture, and I think I'm a big fan of like doing more together. And I think that the distances here are like super short when you look at, again, at the global picture. So very easy from Helsinki to come here, or Stockholm or Tallinn or what have you. So I think that that is something that we should do kind of like much more, bring the kind of like Nordic or the new Nordics like community together.
Yeah, I would say that innovations are usually driven by some kind of shortage or some kind of disruption. And for example, what happened in Finland with the turmoil of Nokia, city up north, Oulu, was very much driven by Nokia. So it was a big thing when they were just running down operations. But what happened is that the government helped and stepped in, and now it's actually more healthier up there. So they're employing more people in the tech scene, but instead of just one company or a couple of companies, now you have tens of companies that are successful. So it's just an example that every disruption must be seen as an opportunity. And I would say that in the Nordics, we're pretty good at doing that. That's one of the sort of secret sauces, I would say.
Okay, so it's kind of a snowball effect of kind of what's come before, and that's influenced that level. So I guess that's in terms of the characteristics of founders, nothing that we're saying here couldn't really be applied to the Baltics as well, other than these kind of, say, big events. So how do you get to that point?
Well, I think there is this trust factor. If you think about what Peter was saying about doing things together, I think it's kind of a part of the DNA and the culture, at least in Finland, that people help each other a lot and things are done together and the ecosystem kind of works together. It's nothing away from anyone. So I think that has also helped many companies and also defined the founders.
But it was not like that when we all started, right? So it was very hard to get the help, but now it's completely different, and I think that's one of the key things, actually.
Okay. And is that, I mean, maybe you're in a better position than me to answer this. I'm not so familiar with the Baltic ecosystem and what it looks like, but do you think that level of trust perhaps is missing here, or have you kind of any experiences around that? Is that possibly, if we had to identify one, that big difference between the two? Baltics.
Yeah, I think one thing, and again, I always have to say that, like, not an expert, and I've just spent like a day and a half here, but already, like, some observations. We had this kind of like ecosystem summit and kind of like discussion yesterday. And I think that there is maybe this like trust element that in Finland, people trust people, like by definition. I mean, it's like very much like trust-based, and actually, we trust our government. So there's kind of like zero corruption, and you can kind of like trust the people to kind of like do the right thing. And I always bring up that, I mean, like in Finland, and it might even be like a problem, but people actually like the tax office because they provide fantastic customer service. Okay, people might not like paying taxes, and like you can discuss then what is kind of like the right amount and all that, but people are very happy with how it works. It's very easy, and I mean, if I talk to my US friends, it can take them 2 months to file their tax, form, and for us it's like, I don't know, 20 seconds or something like that. And I think there's a lot of these kind of things that are different. So here, just what I kind of like notice that there maybe is a bit less trust, especially when it comes to public side as well, and then maybe also. And again, say like, what do I know? But I kind of like maybe also sense a bit that there is maybe more waiting for the government to do something. And I always tell people that, hey guys, I mean, the government works for us, and then you need to tell them what to do and not kind of like wait around. So, but again, I mean, that's random observations from like day and a half.
But what I would say that was also missing, Juha, you mentioned that it wasn't always like that people were helping each other. I think the ambition level has now, since it kind of concretely risen, but I think here as well. I think in terms of Baltic startups, which I see, I think all of them, really aim to reach global markets, well, for obvious reasons, and same applies to any Finnish or Swedish startup. And that relates mainly to this, let's say, slush generation and the young generation of global millennial entrepreneurs. And also, of course, let's say, rise of the new wave of unicorns in China and in US. So big disruptors coming to the market. So people kind of see that it's doable.
Yeah, exactly.
It's easy.
So role models play a part in raising that ambition in an ecosystem.
Totally.
Absolutely, they do. And also, it usually happens within clusters. So for example, like here's a living example, we have a very strong gaming cluster in Finland, also in Sweden. The Danes are good at health and pharma. Norwegians, obviously, anything that has to do with oil and gas and all that stuff. And that's how you can build on your strengths. So you need to have, starting from university research, you need to have the pipeline of building the competence in selected clusters, and small countries can't be expert on everything. And we're still struggling with that in Finland, so it's very hard for us to select. And the question is who can select? Well, that's a very good question, but anyway, you need to do some choices. You can't be an expert in every single area when you have 5 million people or 10 million people. So not even China or US can do that.
Well, previously Nokia chose for us, so the whole education system and research was tuned for Nokia. Now I think government has a hard time in choosing, but let's hope that let's say growth companies choose for us in a sense.
So actually don't be obsessed with being the next Silicon Valley, right? Like, but concentrate on doing what you're best at.
But then, you know, like always this like Silicon Valley thing, and that's like when we started Slush, you know, like 10 years ago, 2008, the whole point with Slush was that Helsinki November, cold, dark, slush on the ground, not the Silicon Valley, much, much better. And it's better because it's different. And I mean, I've been to hundreds, maybe thousands of these like wannabe Silicon Valley events. You organize them in the summer and you hope that it's like nice and sunny, almost like the Silicon Valley. And I mean, I started my career working for the company that Bill and Dave started in their garage in 1939 in Palo Alto, and then, you know, HP and Silicon Valley happened. So again, been there many times, fantastic, but again, you can't lead by following. So we have to kind of like create something of our own, and I think that is what we have here. Kind of like in Nordics and Baltics, that again, we're doing our own thing, and that's very, very important.
I kind of started to think that actually from investor point of view, it's pretty good as well that people aren't that, let's say, BS or marketing oriented, because you kind of start boiling to the deep facts and the realities of the startups, and people are quite honest, you know, where they are. So, you know, there aren't that many surprises. Of course, going to market might take a longer time, and I think one thing what Finnish teams still lack is diversity in international and skill-wise and all of that. So not referring to gender in any way here.
Okay. And what about the social security net that exists? Do you think that also plays a part? I mean, you could almost argue that it's kind of risk-free to go and start a company, right? What's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to be caught by the social security net. So do you think that plays a part?
No, it's not like that, at least not in Finland. I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, you're more or less an outlaw. So if you fail, there's no net to catch you. I mean, it doesn't work. I'm not sure about Sweden or Denmark in that respect.
It's a little easier in say, Denmark.
Yeah, but I would say that, I mean, there is like, I mean, as an entrepreneur, you're kind of like outside a lot of the kind of like official like safety nets and all of that, but still in Finland, I mean, you're not going to end up like dying in the street if you kind of like fail. So I think that, and that is kind of like the case in some places, that actually you will die. So it's again, but I think that the society is very functional, and I think this is one thing that we in Finland don't always realize, that everything kind of works. But when you go outside and then, you know, like take the US, like how the fuck can it take 2 months to file your taxes? I mean, like, what is wrong with you people? And I think that there's a lot of these kind of things that we just take for granted, that of course you have the best education like on the planet, and, you know, like you don't need to worry which school to put your kids in, and they'll get like a great education. And I think that there's a lot of these kind of things that then, and Inka touched on this about the education. I really believe that a lot of the success that we have is actually due to the fact, I mean, we can discuss if it's, you know, the best education or not, but I think that it's the best because our school system doesn't kill initiative, doesn't kill creativity. So, you know, if nothing else, that's something that you need from the educational system, that it doesn't make you into some kind of robot that only can follow like orders and work at an assembly line or an office.
And it's a flat society. You can access even the president if you want to. You can access the CEO of a big company if you want to. So in a way, at least theoretically, good base for building your B2B SaaS customer base in an initial commercialization phase at least.
But I think this is really the wrong question. The question we should be asking, instead of what happens if you fail, if there's a safety net, whatever, we should actually celebrate our successful entrepreneurs. So.
I mean, you get to be an outlaw. That's pretty cool.
We still value our athletes when they win something. We still value our rock stars. We should make the entrepreneurs the rock stars, because let's face it, they are the ones creating most value to the society, much more than a hockey player or a football player. They don't even pay taxes in our countries.
But you could argue that that's you know, a characteristic of Nordic founders potentially, is that they don't like to be too much kind of out there in the spotlight. Or
I don't care if they want to be or that, but they should still be valued, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about numerically, there's around 10,000 startups in the Nordic Baltic scene, and they probably employ around, let's say, 500,000 to 800,000 people.
Yeah.
So they start to be fairly influential sector of creating new jobs. So more than 50% of the new jobs are on the net level created to growth companies. So there is a reason for the economical contribution. But for this cultural thing to happen, that people are successful, even though that they have failed and then built something new, that takes time. That takes just, I think, in my view, like, you know, still a few generations for people to realize that this is the only way for the Nordic society to survive.
Yeah. We have a couple of minutes left if anyone wants to ask a quick question on Slido, if anyone has the app for our panel. So we've got a couple of minutes, so I'll let those come in if anyone has a burning question for us. But I think what could be interesting as well is, if there's one kind of core learning that, say, the Baltic ecosystem could take from the Nordics, what would you boil that down to? I mean, I think particularly looking at it from, say, investment institutions, public institutions, like the actors that help fuel the ecosystem. Are there any easily, lessons that can be applied here as well?
Truth is always out there. So get out of the building. That's how you learn. So, and especially small countries, you just have to go wherever the market is and learn. Because make no mistake, if you have an idea, there's always a Chinese or someone else who has exactly the same idea, and you need to understand that. And the only way you understand it is get out of the building, and out of the country for that matter.
And maybe growing with, the region which is now just around the Baltic Sea. Yeah. I think just riding the wave, benefiting out of that, getting the investors here, working with other startups, I think that's extremely important. Not trying to go alone to conquer the world, but in a way benefit from the ecosystem that is already here.
I think that if you look at what we've been doing in Finland, that it's actually a combination of many things. And I think that maybe the key thing is that I think we've been very, very good at working together. And then we have kind of like a lot of activity, like at the university campuses, and we have a lot of kind of like activity spots, if you will. And I think that that's super important. And really that people are very good at sharing what they're kind of like working on, and they're not afraid of somebody stealing their idea or whatever. And I think that that's something that, again, kind of like super simple thing that just kind of like work together and be very open. I think that that's what we really done for the last couple of years in Finland, like at a very good level. So it delivers.
And one more thing, you have to tell your government what you need because they don't know.
Yeah.
How could they? So it's up to you to demand things like it was said here before, and that's very important. And they will learn.
I think that's a great note to end it on. We're out of time, so please thank our panel.